Tonight's Think Tank, TA Next Gen. Hi, I'm Clara Bloomfield. I'm a theatre maker, lecturer and socially engaged artist and proud ITAC catalyst. As a lecturer, I work at Performing Arts Studio Scotland at Edinburgh College. Here, we provide a dynamic and engaging learning environment which aims to provide the most up-to-date performing arts training and experience that prepares our students for the industry. We offer courses in HNCs, HNDs in acting, dance, makeup, musical theatre, technical theatre and theatre costume. This year we launch our new joint honours degree with Kingston University, a BA Honours Dance and Drama degree. As part of this degree we have Scotland's only applied theatre strand. We are educating tomorrow's teaching artists through practice lab-based workshops and work placements. Within tonight's Think Tank, we'll see myself and some of our students engage with the themes of last year's conference, and through engaging with last year's themes, we'll unearth new questions and new possibilities. This is an interactive podcast. We're calling out to our colleagues from around the world to share their knowledge and experience with the next generation of teaching artists. Now I'll introduce you to our students this evening.
Hi, I'm Callum.
Hi, I'm Zazu.
I'm Hannah Louise.
Hi, I'm Kat.
I'm Rona.
I'm Becca.
Now we thought it would be really useful to go back to ITAC in New York in 2018 and revisit those questions. The questions were as follows. What are the role of the teaching artist as contributors to social justice? What is the responsibility of the 21st century artists as they engage in different communities? How can artists transform schools and institutions as learning in radical ways? And what is the role of art as activism? So our students over the course of this evening will answer some of these questions, and at the end they'll pose new questions, and hopefully with a little help you'll be able to share your education and experience with them. So let's kick off. What is the role of the teaching artist as a contributor to social justice? Callum.
As an artist, I feel the role is to enhance and encourage the voices of the community and express the social injustices that rise amongst the people. Through my own art, which is drama and theatre, I'm able to use my expertise as an artist to invoke change within the society.
Zazu, is that the same for you?
Well, I've just have a few bullet points like I think that it's important to give the voice to the voiceless, to work closely with victims of social injustice in order to get their rights and respect, and through art describe to the unspeakable, and using art to start a discussion.
Becca.
I feel that art has always been a catalyst for social change throughout history, what with political theatre and all that. And I think that now we're at a time where it feels like history is happening around us, what with the political atmosphere that's going on. I think it's just quite exciting to be in a place where art is affecting us more in a social justice environment.
I want to come back to that in a second actually, about this notion of art happening around you and history's happening around you. Can you just explain a little bit more potentially as a group about how your understanding of teaching artistry can support you to contribute to that conversation? Kat, what would you say?
I just believe that in short, we are the voice. We need to advocate, inspire and be the educator.
I think that we have a responsibility in which we have really strong voices and the tools to be able to really speak out in a social justice capacity with our teaching artistry. And in order to do that, if we choose to use our art to work with communities in a teaching artist environment, then we have the real tangible notion of change around us, and we have the ability to use that. And I think if we do take that on, then we will see results for ourselves and future generations.
That's brilliant, Hannah, because you identified the word responsibility, and I think that's a key thing for us at ITAC, is actually understanding the responsibility of the 21st century artists as we engage in different communities. Becca, what's your thoughts on that?
I feel that every human being is inherently creative, and so I think that everybody should have that opportunity to express their creativity in whatever way they feel most comfortable. However, some areas, due to many different factors, don't have access to resources that will allow them to do that. And so it's the responsibility of those, often teaching artists, who have access to that, to bring those resources to those who don't, in order to create more teaching artists, but also more creative human beings.
And how important is that for our own well-being, this notion of creativity, is from a humanitarian perspective?
I feel that we are far more warmer when we're creative. I know that is just my own opinion, but it has been proven in scientific studies that human beings are creative and that we function better when we have a creative outlet, whatever that may be, whether it is in a performance aspect or whether it's in a drawing, painting, even just like knitting or something. That's why people have hobbies, is because it helps them to cope with the everyday life.
It's an outlet.
It's an outlet.
Yeah, I think it's a place for them to explore a deeper part of themselves. I think if they have the everyday, they have school or their job or things like that, I think without having their creative entity within them, they wouldn't be able to handle the everyday. So I feel like creativity is actually a fundamental part of everything. So without it, really we would not be able to function. So I think that's why it is our responsibility to engage that in so many different communities, so many minorities, because we need to be able to place these little droplets so that they can then enhance it within their communities and bring that to the forefront.
And not just in a way where it's trying to create the next breeds of actors or painters or anything. It's just in a general human sense. We're not just trying to give creativity to give them jobs in creative fields, but just to help them with everyday life.
Yeah, it's a safe space where they're not told that this is right and this is wrong, because that puts pressure on. Like, that they can actually just discuss stuff or feel things that they might have been told were incorrect before, and that's actually where you get the best product, when people feel happy.
That's interesting, isn't it, about that notion of happiness and joy, Zazu?
Well, to add on that, I think that we are responsible to take away the idea of community as a minority and rather introduced it as a perfectly fitting part of the jigsaw puzzle that is called our society.
So we're trying to actually not push people into a mould, but give people opportunity to use their art to discover what their role is within society and what they want to say about society. And hopefully, like you're all saying, find their joy. Callum, is there anything you want to add on to that?
I think just on that, just making sure that I think that the art that you're providing is open and it's accessible, and you're working with those people at the same level. There's as I've put it here, to try your hardest to make sure you've got a real non-hegemonic working environment, making sure that the range of people that you're working with, that your artwork is available to a range of different people in a range of different communities. And I think this will give them the opportunities to develop their own education, their own ideas on the world, and discover a sense of identity within themselves.
There's something wonderful about this notion of identity, and you spoke about so eloquently there about breaking this notion of hegemonic structures. What's the danger of existing in hegemonic learning structures, and what's our job as artists to try and steer clear of that?
Being dictated and told
what to do.
And you don't want to have that anywhere, because people don't want to feel like that.
Sometimes people do need that guidance in life and have to be told what to do so they can understand, but I think from an artistic perspective, you can't be like that. I think you have to work with them and really get hands-on with them in a sense to actually understand why they need this art. You know, why do they need this, and why do you need to go in there with the art, you know what I mean?
So it's about us giving the art form, but not the idea and not the outcome. Hannah?
I think that as teaching artists, we're facilitating a conversation, we're not controlling the conversation. And I think in school environments and a lot of, it goes beyond school and further education as well, you're kind of put into these little letterboxes essentially of personality traits or life experiences that you're expected to have and develop on from that. Whereas the role of a teaching artist, you go in and you facilitate with communities and with groups of people who want to break free of that mould, and you give them the opportunity and you give them the tools,
Give them this safe space to do that.
to do that and to build on that and grow from that. You're not going in and saying, okay, like today we're going to change your life, because really that's scarier than, for some people, than just being like, okay, this is what we're going to do today.
And that's pressure for the artist as well.
Exactly.
But I think that's why it's so important for us, like talking about our degree and having the applied theatre module is so important, because taking from when we worked with ITAC, and they're like, they take their inspiration much from Eric Booth and things like that, and in the US a teaching artist is a pretty established thing. Yes, it's not being fully accepted, obviously everything still has to work and blah blah, but it is becoming a much more prominent thing within the UK and things like that. And I think by bringing it into degrees or even just in conversation, it is building up the idea of a teaching artist fundamentally, so that we can use that in schools and institutions. Without having that knowledge of what it is, we can't use that to our best approach.
I think as well, as people who are studying a degree, a lot of us have always felt, and the majority of us come from acting or musical theatre backgrounds coming into this degree, I think that we've all thought about where our careers are going, and I think teacher is always put above our heads, and
like a negative word.
Yeah, as a negative word, and given to us as a fallback, and being like, oh, it's okay, I can just go and be a teacher if I want to. And teacher being in that sense, going and getting a degree in teaching and going to a high school or primary school or a college or a university and teaching there. However, a teaching artist is something that I've only discovered coming here, and as someone who loves engaging with people, I think that teaching artists is a beautiful way to have that aspect of teaching, but in the lens of the hierarchical sense, and also being able to practice your own art forms as well.
And I think coming from that kind of background, there's always this notion of a hierarchy within the arts, and it puts I guess commercial performers above community theatre and working in that grassroots level in order to work with non-actors and people in communities. And I think that by what Rona was saying about bringing it into degree levels or just conversation, it breaks down that notion, and it really makes it like innate within our careers for that to be an option and for that to be accepted.
Do you feel then that within our degree, that using the applied theatre model and really looking at yourselves as teaching artists, do you feel it's enriching your arts practice?
100%.
Absolutely.
I feel like maybe it's my musical theatre background, but for me, when as a teacher, I think in Mrs. Trunchbull and Matilda, when I talk about like applied theatre and like this whole module about the teaching artist, I see the fairy godmother that's like nurturing somebody and guiding them and caring for them and looking after them. Does that make sense? I wouldn't have felt that until about 4 weeks ago.
But I guess what surprised me is the term teaching artist, because I think the surprising thing is we've probably been surrounded by all these people all our lives. You know, people coming into schools and doing knitting or things like we've seen it, but we've just never used that term because there probably here in this country has never been a term for that. Whereas we're now starting to unravel loads of new ways of describing this person and what Cassie do. I think it's a real nurturing way of describing the person.
I think I was involved. I was part of the practice before I even knew what it was, and I think that's what's really special is learning that a big part of what I was already really passionate about actually has a place within the arts to exist in its own little bubble, and then branch out. And the fact that it has been expanding and branching out, and I just didn't have the resources to access that. But now that I do, it not only enriches what I was doing before, but it takes it to a whole new level of having the proper tools to be able to do that responsibly and with a much bigger ethical consideration behind it as well.
And for you, Zazu, what does that look like, this notion of responsibility and ethical working as a teaching artist, and how does that tie with your art?
Well, in my opinion, as a child, I remember there was glimpses of people, teachers coming in and doing like an art project or taking, I don't know, mathematics class into a different kind of approach. And I, as a child, I would wonder, I thought it was something unique and that was fun and I enjoyed that. And I just thought, why it can't be like this all the time? I learn so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, you use those kinesthetic kind of approach and you do things, and there's some muscle memory involved in it. And all that, it helps you to absorb that knowledge in a more fun way and maybe explores other paths as well that could interest you in that subject. So I think now that we know that there is such a thing as a teaching artist, we can actually train teachers to become a teaching artist, which would be beneficial for the youths and for the upcoming generations.
That's quite radical, suggesting that actually we have the capabilities to work with educators to reimagine what the education system could look like. Rona, do you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think the notion, like going back to what we were talking about even in the degree level, talking about how quickly we've established teaching artists, going into schools at a younger level, like primary schools, even high schools, like Zazu said, whenever I was in education, it very much felt like a teacher was above you and you learned from the teacher. And if you got an outside person to come along, it was like, wow, they're so unique, how are they doing this? It was a very strange feeling, and it went into what we were talking about in our applied theatre class, the two different types of teaching. There's a didactic, which was what I had always experienced, the notion that the teacher will teach you and you're just to absorb like a wee sponge. And then when these facilitators or people would come in, like Zazu said, very experimental, and you got to experience all these different types of things. And I think it's about working with not just the teachers, but working with the younger generation, with children, all different age levels, to level that playing field and make sure that it's not a big gap between the teacher and the learner. It is even ground, and even the teacher should be taking from the student. They should be learning every day. And it's like people say, you take something new from every day. And I think we need to close that gap, and it's really, really important that we do that, so that not only that does the child feel supported and welcomed into this environment, but the teacher, facilitator, whoever they may be, teaching artist, has now got a greater understanding of how that child likes to be taught or how they can approach learning in a different way.
So it's about really giving that person autonomy within their education.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about that is that actually really connects to one of our main themes last year of the conference, is how can artists transform schools and institutions of learning in radical ways. And I think picking up ever so slightly there on what you were saying, Rona, is that my relationship with my role as an educator and as a theatre maker, my practice is so inherently linked. And the more I work within certainly a college environment, I'm really starting to sort of reposition myself in a position that we're no longer the holders of knowledge. That as students, you can access all the information that you want and need at the click of a button. So do we need to have a new model for education? Is it creative coaching? Callum?
Yeah, I believe we do need a new model for teaching. I think there's a lot of new ways that you could go into schools and not have this didactic way of teaching. And I think it's this idea of sort of understanding what your art is going to do when you're going into that classroom or with the community, but also understanding what the participants within the community are going to take from it. And what Rona was saying there, this idea of you learning from something, and I think radical ways would really help that. I think it's a great notion in your head of being able to go in and this famous saying of you learn a new thing every day. How many times can teachers say that when they're in that job? Can they really learn something every day? But I feel like in a more radical way or a radical approach, they might do.
That's interesting. So we're not confined by this notion of columns and boxes and
Yeah.
teaching by discipline. Becca, is there anything you want to sort of add on to that about, as a teaching artist, how would you encourage young people to take ownership over their education?
Yeah, I think it's just linking back to what Saz and Rona said about when people came into their school and did those, like I remember when people came into my school and did a special workshop or something that was engaging in business skills, but you had to pretend to be a business and you had to make products and stuff like that. And the idea that that was something that was a one-off, when it could be something that is you're constantly engaging with. It doesn't need to just be a treat. Oh, a treat. Yeah, for you're good and you've had here's a start of the year. This is how fun it could be, but in reality you're just going to be sitting in classes for the rest of the year.
That's very like what you were telling us about your own practice, Clara, was the idea of you don't just want to drop in. If you're asked to facilitate or work within a community or a school, you don't just want to put yourself in there for a week or a lesson or a couple of weeks.
And be forgotten about.
And be completely forgotten about. You want to, like you said, you don't want to just teach them something.
You want to impact.
You want to go in there, create an impact, but also give them the skills to put your idea or their ideas collectively forward into their learning and into the community's ability to carry on.
It sounds like there's something to do with the importance of our relationship.
Yeah.
The relationship before the art, before this notion of we have to make a product.
Exactly.
That if you look at the relationship to have the conversation and the art becomes a conversation. Kat, what would you like to add on to that?
I think that we essentially need to ask them how they want to learn. Be the inspiration to show them different ways and how they can learn, because you don't always know what is the best way for you to learn until you've been shown it. So our responsibility is to sort of show them all the different ways. Some people could be easier for them to learn through numbers and letters, but a lot of people learn through improv and stuff like that.
I think it's also really important to give students the opportunity for feedback on how they're learning, because for example when I was in high school we were being taught we were getting taught religious studies and stuff like that, and we had some Catholic people come in and do assemblies with us, and a lot of people felt that we were getting all this religion pushed upon us and that we would rather have more education on it and have other religions represented as well, because we weren't a classified religious school, so why were we getting this religion when there were people who didn't identify with that? And it ended up going in the news. There was a petition started by one of my classmates, and we ended up managing to get this changed. And so that was something that had never happened before. But if you tell students that they are allowed to ask to have it changed, and they're allowed to say, this isn't working, because once they do, change does come. I think that kids are taught nowadays that they can't make a change, and I think we are definitely developing there. You've got people who are under the age of 16 who are fighting for climate change, and adults who have nothing to do with it. So I think that young people are now discovering more and more that they have the ability to create change, but just not making it a force that they need to have.
You wonder why people then are frightened, that people who hold the power are frightened of allowing people to have a voice.
And don't want to lose that power.
Yeah, that's what it is, because that gives me status,
Yeah.
and I'm important. But actually, as teaching artists, we realise that that's not the thing that's important here, is it?
Earlier you said about the whole idea of knowledge, and do teachers still have the same knowledge as what maybe they did 20 years ago, 30 years ago? And I think that's what it comes down to now, is that teachers probably don't want to let that status slip, because it's that idea of maybe the students know more, and for to go in with more radical ways, it's maybe understanding how can we allow the students to teach to teach us.
So it becomes this dialogue, this exchange, and I think this idea of teacher as expert is still important. However, it's about once you know if you're confident with the material, let it go.
Yeah.
And then actually use that environment to have that discussion. Hannah, in fact, I want to come back to you in a second. Zazu, what's your consideration on sort of radical environment?
Well, I've written something.
Oh,
and I was
going to share it with us today.
I am.
Lovely.
I was a bit. I think I was about a lot. There was a lot of frustration, so I might be using quite strong opinions. But here we go.
But isn't that the point, though? The
Yes,
purpose of art is
I think
to
it is.
unravel the world around us.
After
Thank you,
all, I was a
Anthony.
student myself, and I know what I'm talking about.
From your perspective of the world, of
From
course,
my perspective.
and your context.
So I've written that. Well, right now we are still taking away creativity from young people through shoving knowledge in a outdated way down their throats. And since the beginning of Homo sapiens, we have been artistically involved at all times. Well, through drawings, to express ourselves and to tell our stories, creating weapons and tools to help us doing day-to-day tasks, through moving around and exploring and learning about the world on our own terms. But unfortunately, somewhere along the way, it has been taken away from us. We have been put in the rooms and sat on the school benches and forced to listen to a person that is standing and speaking at us. We are losing more and more creative minds, in my opinion, through boring them to death and killing their passion before they even discover what it really is. We can transform the society by encouraging young minds to think for themselves, to make their own opinions, to find creative ways to overcome problems that people think right now that cannot be solved. And I think we need new ways to encourage and re-engage with the creative self. Because youths are our future, and so far we are discouraging them to take an active part in building and living in our in a healthy society. I think we need to change things the way they are right now.
You spoke about new ways, and Becca, that goes back to what you said about you when you were at school a couple of years ago, that someone had the confidence to have their stand up and let their voice be heard. And I think that really connects to, I suppose, what our role is, depending on our context of how we use art as activism. Hannah, what's your thoughts on art as activism?
So I think that as teaching artists, when we're going into communities, we have a real responsibility to decide if we have a place in aiding in the facilitation of STEM stories. Just in order to ensure that we are going in there and doing good and not making our lives harder. And I think a really good methodology in terms to do that is working with the tools that communities have already in order to create a change that is tangible. And we've kind of touched on it in our classes, where you don't want to parachute into communities, give them all these incredible tools and resources and be like, okay, this is how you can empower yourself for change, or here's how you can participate socially or politically, or get a better education, and then you leave and those communities are left with nothing. I think that that's an incredible initiative to go in and want to do something with those communities, but if you are going in there, leaving your art behind, but not leaving them with the tools to then use it, I think that in a lot of senses can actually create a bigger problem, because then you have people who feel very disenfranchised, and that in itself can be really damaging. So I think it's using art to liberate communities and using art to liberate individuals, but giving them the tools to allow that to be a consistent change within their lives, past the projects and the things that we work on.
Absolutely, and this notion of parachuting in, leaving your art, that suggests that as artists we're gods. And actually, what you said before about using art to tell people's own stories.
Yeah.
And it's not about us setting the agenda. Rona.
Yeah, going off the same thing, I will be honest, when we were talking about the questions, so I took it as artists versus activists, and I started thinking about this notion of why do we need to define that? Why do we need to define ourselves as an artist or as an activist? then rereading the questions, so it was artist as the activist. But that kind of like that actually worked together in my mind, as I was like, I don't think definition is important either way. I think all art encompasses activism, no matter which way you're doing it, through your big P politics, your little P politics, whether it's your personal way of thinking, through it's your community's role, things like that. I think we need to get rid of this idea that certain types of art can deal with certain types of social issues or political issues. I think it should be everything that can be involved with everything, and that is up to the teaching artists, the community that they're working with, all the people involved with that project, to decide how and why they want to produce this piece or whatever part of activism that is.
I think that goes back to what we learned from Liz Lehrman, doesn't it, about not just having a hegemonic structure of this sort of top-down vertical approach to the value of art in terms of bourgeois versus community, but actually understanding the notion of society and how society should exist, not in this top-down structure of who's rich and who's not, what colour you are, what colour you're not, what ethnicity you are, what gender you are, what sexuality you are, but actually looking at this as just a horizontal plane of being.
Exactly.
And just using art to navigate our way through these things, to explore things. Cats, is there anything you want to add to that?
Art as activists, for me, it's very obvious. It's be the change that you want to see in the world. We subconsciously create the art of the things that we are passionate about and that we want to use to either change, inspire, encourage, or shock the world around us.
I'm kind of the same note. I felt that if it wasn't for my art, I wouldn't have been inspired to get involved in activism. I felt like through creating art is how I discovered a lot of social justice, I don't want to say trends, but movements. Thank you very much. Social justice movements. And so within that, art has always been linked to how I feel with activism. And I think that,
I think what's really clear is through all your conversations this evening is that through this module and through understanding the role of teaching artists, something's awakened in every single one of you about the engagement with your politics, how you can use your art as a vehicle for other people to talk about their politics, their situation, that they can tell the stories that they want to tell. Callum?
Just going off of what you were saying there, I think I believe that I would never have seen myself as an activist. I would have never classed myself, but I think now that I can see how art can create that activism, I think for me it's all about finding the truths. And it's about finding the truths through art, and whether that be towards communities that you're working in or an individual. I think it's that idea of activating your own truth and finding out not so much an outcome, but a path.
Isn't that wonderful, actually, that you don't necessarily have to have a product-orientated approach, that you can use art as a way to start that conversation with your family, with other people in the community, to discovering your own truth. Zazu, how do you think we could do that?
Well, personally, I think that artists as activists is the only way forward. Because we organised and took part in marches when we wanted rights, and we do posters when people ignore the sound of our voices. We slip in political subjects into the theatre in order to be heard and to start a conversation. And we sing to move people's hearts. So we do not use weapons, we fight through the most powerful way possible, and that's through our art.
That's beautiful. So as we come to the end of our podcast this evening, I think this is when we call out to our colleagues and our friends around the world for you to share your knowledge and your experience with the next generation of teaching artists right here in Scotland, right here in Edinburgh. And to do that, we're going to pose you 4 questions, and hopefully you can answer these questions. They'll be put underneath in the comments below, but we'll ask you them. And whatever you do, if you can sort of send these please to the Twitter handle at ITAC_collab #TA_NextGen, and that's just short for next generation. So the first question we'd like to pose to you
is, as a teaching artist, what can you learn and how can your approach unravel the truths.
So by you, do you mean yourself? What can you learn?
What can you learn as a student, yeah.
Excellent. So for us, it's really important that we begin to understand how we can learn from other people and their approaches to unravelling this truth that we spoke about in terms of activism. Wonderful. Hannah?
So as a teaching artist, how do you stay responsible for the communities in which you work in?
And that's something we need to constantly renegotiate. What is our responsibility? How do we ethically look after other people? So we're really looking to your guidance here, ITAC community, about how do we do that in a way that keeps community safe, and how do we keep ourselves safe? Because as people who are young within this field, we need to find ways to safeguard our emotional well-being and our hearts. Kat, question number 3.
As a teaching artist, how do we guide the communities while staying true to our own beliefs?
So there's that balance there, isn't there, about facilitating the art and the life experiences of other people, but where's the room for your art within that? Or is your art the teaching artistry? Wonderful question. And finally, Becca.
What is the role of praxis within your work, i.e. which practitioners inform your work?
So we're really interested to learn about new, wonderful practitioners that we've never heard of before, and we can use that to underpin our own methods and methodologies when working with other communities. It's been an absolute pleasure working with our students this evening to talk about our connections to the themes from last year. They've certainly really reinformed the way that I approach my work, the work that I do with ITAC as a catalyst, and the work that I do in wider communities, and it's really informing the way that I engage with our students in a way that hopefully is authentic and activating their truth. Thank you very much for your time this evening. From all of us here at Edinburgh College, goodbye!
Goodbye!